The warning. Captain Zexathara adjusted his mandibles nervously as he stared at the holographic display showing the forbidden zone ahead. The crimson barrier stretched across 17 star systems, marking the boundary that no intelligent species had dared cross in over 2 centuries. His crew of Vorthak warriors shifted uneasily behind him, their scaled hides glistening under the bridge's amber lighting. "Captain, we're receiving the automated warning again," reported his communications officer, her voice trembling slightly. The message played through the ship's speakers in perfect galactic standard, though everyone knew it originated from the mysterious humans who had sealed themselves away long ago. "This is human space. You are approaching a restricted zone. Turn back immediately. This is your final warning. Any vessel crossing this boundary will be met with immediate and overwhelming force. You have been warned." Zexathara had heard this message countless times during his military career, but never this close to the actual boundary. The red energy field shimmered before them like a wall of liquid fire, beautiful and terrifying. Behind it lay the greatest mystery in the galaxy, Earth and its surrounding colonies, sealed away after what the archives called the Great Withdrawal. "Status report," Zexathara commanded, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "All systems nominal, Captain," his tactical officer replied. "Weapons charged, shields at maximum. The energy barrier appears to be purely defensive, designed to repel rather than destroy." "Intelligence estimates, Mr. Korth?" The ship's science officer, a brilliant Altarian with pale blue skin, consulted his datapad nervously. "Based on historical records, Captain, the humans withdrew from galactic society exactly 247 years ago after the Xerion incident. They've maintained this barrier ever since, with no communication beyond automated warnings. Most xenobiologists believe they've either died out or regressed to a pre-spaceflight civilization." Zexathara nodded slowly. The Xerion incident remained classified at the highest levels, but rumors persisted throughout the galaxy. Something about a failed diplomatic mission, a misunderstanding that had cost thousands of lives. The humans had simply left, packed up their colonies, recalled their fleets, and disappeared behind an impenetrable wall of energy. "Sir, if I may," interrupted his first officer, Commander Yillish. "The Hegemony Council was very specific about our mission parameters. We are to probe the human barrier, test its defenses, and report back. Nothing more." "I'm well aware of our orders, Commander." Zexathara's tone carried a warning edge. The truth was more complicated than his crew knew. The galactic hegemony had grown desperate. Their expansion had stalled, resources were becoming scarce, and the 17 star systems behind the human barrier contained some of the richest mineral deposits in the known galaxy. Patience had finally run out. The bridge fell silent except for the soft humming of the ship's systems. The VHS, Sovereign, a hegemony dreadnought, was one of the most powerful vessels ever constructed. Its crew of 5,000 represented the elite of military service, chosen specifically for this mission. If anyone could breach the human barrier and survive, it would be them. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Hegemony Command," announced the communications officer. "Put it through." Admiral Krextar's imposing figure materialized in the center of the bridge, his 4 arms clasped behind his massive frame. The Hegemony's supreme military commander had personally overseen the preparation for this mission. "Captain Zexathara, you are cleared for final approach. Intelligence suggests the barrier is merely a deterrent. Our analysis indicates the humans likely lack the technological capability to maintain serious defensive systems after 2 centuries of isolation. Proceed with caution, but proceed nonetheless." "Understood, Admiral." "What are our engagement parameters if we encounter resistance?" "You are authorized to use whatever force necessary to complete the mission. The hegemony requires those resources, Captain. The greater good demands it." The transmission ended, leaving Zexathara alone with his doubts and his duty. He looked around at his crew, seeing a mixture of excitement and fear in their alien features. They were about to make history, one way or another. "Helm, take us forward. Reduce speed to 1/4 impulse. All departments report readiness." "Engineering ready, Captain. Tactical systems online and ready. Science stations monitoring all frequencies. Medical bay prepared for casualties." The last report sent a chill through Zexathara. Their medical officer, Dr. Talani, was not given to pessimism. If she was preparing for casualties, perhaps she knew something the rest of them didn't. The Sovereign crept forward, its massive bulk moving with surprising grace toward the shimmering barrier. As they approached, the energy field seemed to pulse and writhe, as if sensing their presence. The automated warning began broadcasting again, but this time there was something different in the tone, something almost sad. "Captain, I'm detecting some unusual readings from the barrier," reported Mr. Korth. "The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. It's not just a defensive screen, it's scanning us, learning about us." "Scanning how?" "Everything, sir. Hull composition, crew complement, weapon systems, even biological signatures. It's mapping our entire ship down to the molecular level." A cold realization began to form in Zexathara's mind. If the barrier was this sophisticated, what lay beyond it? What had the humans become in their centuries of isolation? "Sir, we're at the barrier's edge," reported the helm officer. "Ready to proceed on your command." Zexathara stood up from his command chair, the weight of decision heavy on his shoulders. Behind him lay the known galaxy, with its politics and resource wars and eternal struggle for survival. Ahead lay the unknown, a realm that had been sealed away for nearly 2.5 centuries. Whatever happened next would change the course of galactic history. "All hands, this is the captain. We are about to cross into human space, the first vessel to do so in over 2 centuries. Whatever we find beyond this barrier, remember that we represent not just the hegemony, but all of galactic civilization. Stay alert, follow orders, and trust in your training." He settled back into his chair and gripped the armrests tightly. "Helm, take us across." The Sovereign pushed forward into the shimmering wall of energy. For a moment, the entire ship was bathed in red light as the barrier analyzed every atom of their vessel. Then suddenly, they were through. Space looked normal on the other side, filled with the same stars and cosmic dust they had left behind. But something felt different. The very air seemed to hum with potential energy, and every instrument on the ship began registering readings that made no sense. "Captain," whispered Mr. Korth, his voice filled with wonder and terror, "I think we've made a terrible mistake." Before Zexathara could ask what he meant, the sensors detected something impossible. Ships, thousands of them, arranged in perfect formation, waiting silently in the void. But these weren't the primitive vessels the hegemony had expected to find. These were craft of impossible design, sleek and deadly, their hulls made from materials that shouldn't exist according to galactic science. And at the center of the fleet, hanging motionless like a dark star, was something that defied classification. It was massive beyond comprehension, a structure that seemed to bend space around itself. As the Sovereign's computers tried to analyze it, error messages began cascading across every screen. "Captain," the communications officer called out, her voice barely controlled, "we're being hailed. Put it through." The voice that emerged from the speakers was unmistakably human, but there was something else in it now, something that spoke of vast intelligence and barely contained power. "Unknown vessel, you have violated human space. You were warned. Prepare to face the consequences of your intrusion." As the words echoed through the bridge, every light on the ship flickered, and Zexathara realized with growing horror that their crossing of the barrier hadn't gone unnoticed. The humans were still here, but they had become something far beyond what anyone in the galaxy had imagined possible. The hunt was about to begin, and the Sovereign had just become the prey. The hunt Captain Zexathara felt his blood freeze as the human fleet materialized around them like ghosts becoming solid. One moment they had been alone in space, the next they were surrounded by vessels that moved with impossible grace, their hulls reflecting starlight in ways that hurt to look at directly. "Evasive maneuvers!" Zexathara barked, but his helm officer was already shaking his head. "Sir, our engines aren't responding. Something is interfering with our propulsion systems. Weapons? Offline, Captain. All offensive systems have been disabled." The tactical display showed their situation in stark detail. The Sovereign, pride of the hegemony fleet, was dead in space, surrounded by ships that appeared to phase in and out of reality. The human vessels moved without visible propulsion, their hulls seeming to ripple like water while maintaining perfect structural integrity. "Analysis, Mr. Korth. What are we dealing with?" The science officer's tentacles trembled as he consulted his instruments. "Captain, these readings are impossible. Those ships, they're not entirely in our dimensional space. They exist in multiple phases of reality simultaneously. And the energy signatures." He paused, double-checking his readings. "Sir, each of those vessels is generating more power than our entire home fleet combined." A new voice crackled through the communications array, this one different from the first. Female, calm, with an undertone that suggested vast amusement. "Hegemony vessel, Sovereign. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Network. You have exactly one opportunity to explain your presence in human space before we take permanent action." Zexathara straightened in his command chair, drawing on every bit of his diplomatic training. "Commander Chen, I am Captain Zexathara of the Galactic Hegemony. We are here on a peaceful mission of exploration and potential re-establishment of relations between our peoples." Laughter echoed through the speakers. But it wasn't pleasant. It carried the weight of centuries and the bitter taste of betrayal remembered. "Peaceful exploration. How fascinating. Tell me, Captain, do you know why we sealed ourselves away from your galactic community?" The historical records mention a diplomatic incident. A diplomatic incident. The human's voice turned cold. "Is that what your people call genocide these days?" The bridge fell silent. Even the soft humming of the ship's systems seemed to quiet in response to the accusation. I'm not familiar with those details, Commander. That was before my time." "Before your time? Yes, it always is, isn't it? Let me refresh your memory, Captain. 247 years ago, your hegemony sent a peaceful diplomatic mission to the human colony of New Geneva. 15 million civilians lived there. Men, women, children, farmers, teachers, artists. They welcomed your diplomats with open arms." The tactical display showed the human ships moving closer, their formations tightening around the Sovereign, like a closing fist. "Your diplomats claimed there had been a misunderstanding about territorial boundaries. They requested a meeting with our colonial leadership to discuss mutual cooperation. When our leaders arrived, your people activated an orbital bombardment platform hidden in their diplomatic vessel. 15 million people died in the space of 6 hours. Zexathara felt his heart's racing. This wasn't in any official record he had access to. "Commander, I was not present for those events. I had no knowledge. No knowledge. How convenient. But you see, Captain, we haven't forgotten. We have perfect recall. Every death, every scream, every child calling out for parents who had been vaporized. We remember it all." Around them, the human ships began to change. Their hulls shifted and flowed like liquid metal, weapons ports opening that revealed technology beyond anything in the galactic databases. Energy readings spiked to levels that should have torn space apart, but somehow remained perfectly controlled. After New Geneva, we realized something important about the galaxy, Commander Chen continued, her voice taking on an almost conversational tone. You see, we had always assumed that intelligence naturally led to wisdom, that advanced civilizations would be peaceful. We were naive. The galaxy is full of predators who mask their hunger with pretty words about cooperation and mutual benefit. Dr. Talani leaned forward from her station. Captain, I'm detecting massive biological modifications on the human vessels. The crew members, they're not entirely human anymore. So we withdrew, the voice continued, apparently able to hear their conversations despite communication circuits being closed. We sealed ourselves away and began to prepare. Preparation, Captain, is humanity's greatest strength. We had time to think, to plan, to evolve. The nearest human ship moved closer, and for a moment, its hull became transparent. Inside, Zexthara could see figures that had once been human, but were now something more. They moved with impossible grace, their forms enhanced by technology that seemed to blur the line between organic and artificial. Their eyes glowed with an inner light that suggested vast intelligence and terrible purpose. In our isolation, we discovered things your galactic civilization never imagined. We learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level, to exist in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously, to merge consciousness with artificial intelligence in ways that preserved the soul while enhancing the mind. We became something new. The ship shuddered as scanning beams swept across its hull. Every system was being analyzed, catalogued, understood completely. Captain, whispered Commander Yilish, perhaps we should attempt to withdraw. Request permission to return to our own space. Zexthara nodded and opened a channel. Commander Chen, we acknowledge that our presence here was inappropriate. We request permission to return to hegemony space immediately. This has clearly been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Yes, there does seem to be a pattern with your people, doesn't it? But I'm afraid withdrawal is no longer an option, Captain. You see, we've been monitoring your communications since you entered our space. We know about your mission parameters, your orders to test our defenses, your authorization to use whatever force necessary. The blood drained from Zexthara's face. Their encrypted communications should have been impossible to intercept, let alone decode. We also know about the resource surveys your people have been conducting along our border, the mining estimates, the population projections, the invasion timelines. Did you really think we wouldn't notice? On the tactical display, more ships appeared. Not just dozens now, but hundreds. They materialized from empty space as if reality itself was bending to accommodate them. Each vessel was unique, no two exactly alike, as if they had been grown rather than built. The truth is, Captain, your arrival here was not unexpected. We've been waiting for it. Waiting for the moment when the galaxy's greed would finally overcome its fear. And now that moment has come. The ship's lights flickered, and when they stabilized, everything had changed. The bridge displays now showed impossible readings. They were somehow in multiple locations simultaneously, existing in several dimensional phases at once. You wanted to test our defenses, to see what we had become during our long isolation. Very well. Consider this your field test. Around them, the human fleet began to move with purpose, but they weren't preparing for battle. They were preparing for something far more sophisticated than mere combat. We're going to show you something, Captain. Something your people need to understand before they make any more misunderstandings. You're going to witness the price of crossing human territory. The Sovereign found itself being pulled deeper into human space, not by tractor beams or any technology they recognized, but by forces that seemed to operate outside the normal laws of physics. They were being taken somewhere specific, somewhere important. Where are you taking us? Zexathera demanded. Home, Captain. We're taking you to see what remains of New Geneva. And then we're going to show you what we've built from the ashes. You wanted to know what humans became in isolation? You're about to find out. As they were drawn deeper into human space, past planets that had been transformed into something that defied description, past structures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, Zexathera began to understand the magnitude of their error. They hadn't just crossed a boundary. They had awakened something that had been waiting patiently for nearly 2.5 centuries for the chance to remind the galaxy why humans were feared, why that fear had been justified, and why crossing human territory was a mistake that no one made twice. The hunt was entering its next phase, and the prey was beginning to understand that escape had never been an option. The Reckoning. The journey through human space revealed wonders and horrors that would haunt Captain Zexathera's dreams for whatever remained of his life. Planets had been transformed into living ecosystems that pulsed with artificial intelligence. Asteroid belts had been converted into vast computational networks that processed information at speeds approaching the theoretical limits of physics, and everywhere the signs of a civilization that had transcended its original boundaries. When they finally arrived at their destination, Zexathera understood why the humans had brought them here. New Geneva hung before them, but not as it had been during the massacre. The planet glowed with an inner light, its surface covered by a memorial that spanned continents. 15 million names were inscribed in letters of pure energy across the planet's face, each one burning with the light of a star. Beautiful, isn't it? Commander Chen's voice had lost its edge, replaced by something deeper and more terrible, genuine sorrow mixed with implacable determination. It took us 40 years to complete the memorial, every name researched, every life remembered, every dream that was cut short documented for posterity. The Sovereign hung motionless above the memorial world, its crew staring in stunned silence at the magnitude of what they were seeing. This wasn't just remembrance, it was a promise, a declaration that nothing would be forgotten, nothing forgiven. "Captain," Mr. Korth whispered, "I'm detecting massive energy concentrations throughout this system. It's not just the memorial planet. Everything here has been weaponized. The asteroid fields, the gas giants, even the star itself has been modified." Modified how? "The star's output has been precisely controlled and focused. Captain, they could use it as a weapon capable of sterilizing entire star systems." On the tactical display, the full scope of human preparation became clear. This wasn't just one system. It was a network spanning hundreds of worlds, all connected by technology that operated outside normal space-time. The humans hadn't just survived their isolation, they had used it to become something the galaxy had never seen before. "Tell me, Captain," Commander Chen continued, "what do you see when you look at that memorial?" "I see." Zexathera struggled for words. "I see remembrance. Honor for the dead." "Do you? Look closer. Use your ship's deep scanners." The science officer complied, and what the sensors revealed sent shock waves through the bridge. The memorial wasn't just symbolic. Each name contained a complete quantum recording, not just the memory of the person, but their consciousness itself, preserved in crystalline structures that defied physics. 15 million consciousnesses, Chen explained, preserved, aware, and very, very angry. They know what was done to them, they know who did it, and they've been waiting for justice. The implications hit Zexathera like a physical blow. "You're saying they're still alive?" "Alive is such a limited concept, Captain. They exist, they think, they remember, and they have a collective will that spans this entire system. Every weapon, every defense, every modification we've made to our space, it all operates under their guidance. The dead of New Geneva have become the guardians of human space." Around them, the human fleet arranged itself in patterns that created geometric formations spanning thousands of kilometers. As they moved, space itself seemed to respond, creating corridors of folded reality that connected distant points instantaneously. We've learned many things during our isolation, Captain. We've learned that consciousness is more durable than flesh, that intelligence can be preserved beyond biological death, that the universe has laws we never imagined. But most importantly, we've learned that there are some sins that cannot be forgiven, only answered. A new presence made itself known on the bridge, not through the communication system, but through direct contact with their minds. 15 million voices speaking as one, each word carrying the weight of injustice remembered. Captain Zexathara of the Galactic Hegemony, the collective voice spoke inside their heads. You carry the genetic markers of the Vorthax species. Your people were present at New Geneva. Your people participated in our murder. The crew recoiled in terror as the mental contact intensified. Images flashed through their minds, memories of the massacre from the perspective of the victims. Children running for shelters that never came, families huddling together as orbital strikes fell like rain, the last moments of a civilization that had committed no crime except existing in territory the hegemony wanted. We know every detail of your military history, Captain, the collective continued. We know about the Talaxian Purge, the Andorian resettlement, the Kelvin solution. Your hegemony's pattern of expansion through genocide isn't accidental. It's policy. Zexathara tried to speak, to deny the accusations, but the words wouldn't come. The mental contact made deception impossible. Every thought, every memory, every moment of doubt about his own civilization's methods was laid bare. Your ship contains the technical specifications for weapons designed specifically for orbital bombardment of civilian populations, the voices pressed. Your crew includes specialists in what you euphemistically call population management. You didn't come here to restore relations, Captain. You came here to conquer. On the view screen, the human ships began to change once again. But this time, they weren't just shifting form. They were revealing their true nature. Each vessel was a hybrid of technology and consciousness, crewed not just by evolved humans, but by artificial intelligences that had been given full citizenship in human society. The boundary between organic and synthetic had been erased entirely. You see, Captain, while your galaxy spent the last 2 centuries fighting wars and conquering weaker species, we spent it solving problems. We solved death. We solved scarcity. We solved the fundamental question of what intelligence can become when it's freed from biological limitations. We became something new. Commander Chen's image appeared on the main screen, but she was no longer entirely human. Her eyes held depths that suggested vast computational power, and her form seemed to shift between flesh and energy. We could have returned to the galaxy decades ago, she explained. We had the power to stop your wars, to enforce peace, to remake your civilizations in more enlightened forms. But the dead of New Geneva counseled patience. They wanted to see if the galaxy would learn from its mistakes, if it would evolve beyond its primitive savagery. Instead, you grew worse. The hegemony expanded its territory by 50% in the last century alone. 17 species have been exterminated, dozens more enslaved, and now you've come for us. The collective voice returned, and this time it carried the weight of final judgment. Captain Zexathara, you have a choice. Your ship and crew represent a significant intelligence and military asset. We can preserve your consciousnesses as we did our own people, integrate you into our civilization, allow you to become something greater than what you were. You would have eternity to learn, to grow, to understand the true potential of intelligence unshackled from biological prejudice. The alternative, Commander Chen added, is to return you to hegemony space with a message for your leaders. What message? That human territory is closed, permanently. Any vessel that crosses our boundary will be met with the full force of our anger. guided by the will of 15 million souls who demand justice. We've prepared for 2.5 centuries for this moment, Captain. We're ready for anything your galaxy can send against us." On the tactical display, new contacts appeared, ships numbering in the millions, orbital platforms that dwarfed entire moons, stellar engineering projects that could redirect the output of multiple stars. The humans hadn't just built a defense. They had built a civilization that existed on a scale the galaxy had never imagined. "Choose quickly, Captain. Our patience, unlike our memory, has limits." Zexathara looked around at his crew, seeing the same mix of terror and awe in their faces that he felt in his own hearts. They had come expecting to find a weakened remnant of humanity, instead discovering a civilization that had transcended every boundary the galaxy thought inviolate. We choose to return," he said finally. "We'll carry your message." "Wise," the collective voice acknowledged. "But understand this. You are the last hegemony vessel that will be permitted to leave human space alive. The next ship that crosses our boundary will be considered an act of war, and wars with humanity no longer end with the survivors nursing their wounds. They end with the aggressors learning what justice looks like when it's administered by the dead." The return journey took only minutes, accomplished through technologies that folded space like origami. One moment they were in the heart of human territory, the next they were back at the barrier, their ship gently pushed through the energy field like a cork popping from a bottle. As they crossed back into normal space, every system on the Sovereign came back online. Their weapons, their engines, their communications, all restored as if nothing had happened, but the memory of what they had seen would never leave them. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Hegemony Command. Admiral Krextar wants an immediate report." Zexathara stared at the barrier behind them, watching as it shimmered with new patterns that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of 15 million hearts. "Tell the Admiral," he said quietly, "that we found what we were looking for, and it found us in return." Behind them, human space waited in patient silence, protected by the dead and guarded by a civilization that had learned the true price of peace. The galaxy would have to decide whether it was ready to pay that price or whether it preferred to test the limits of humanity's newfound patience. Either way, the warning had been delivered. No one crosses human territory without consequence, and now the galaxy knew what that consequence would be.